Here we have what we've been working with when we're exporting our pages for a printer. So if we take a look at what trim, bleed, and live area are, this is what we've been working with on our reference guide and our ads. And what we are using that for is so that we can make it look like our ad is printed to the very edge of the page. So that's what's called full bleed. And most magazines have and are printed in full bleed. Newspaper can't print to the edge, so we don't ever use bleed or have the necessity to create bleed with our ads and our print collateral when we're working in newspaper. But magazines are looking for full bleed. So you'll be learning in your advertising class how mechanical specifications work, or we call them in the industry, you need your specs. Your specs refer to size and what the trim size is, the type area, or the live or safe area, and then of course the bleed. We're also saving, you can see at the bottom here, PDF X1A is what we've been using. So if you take a look at mechanical specs, this is for Grand Magazine. This is the magazine that I used to work with. And I was in charge of all the ads that came in, but I was the layout and design of the entire magazine. And this is one of the ads I created for the magazine. And so what you're looking for is, if it's a full page ad, then you're looking for the trim size, the safe area, and then you go down to the bottom and there's your bleed size. So what that means is, it's easier to see on this next slide. So this dotted line is the actual size of your page, the trim. So that's 8.5 by 11. The bleed area here, I like to build in a 1/4 inch bleed, and industry standard is 1/8 of an inch, so 0.125 inches. And so you need your image on your page to go outside of the trim, which is why it's called bleed. It bleeds past the trim line. And then on the inside of the trim, we have the margin that we've been using, and that's our live or safe area. And so these are industry standard terms. When you look at mechanical specs and they say, I need this, this, and this from you, they're referring to live area, where your margins need to be placed inside your trim size, which is your finished size piece of paper or size of the magazine, and anything outside of that is the bleed. So we need our image to exceed that in order to make it look like it's printed right to the edge, because the reason why a finished page is called trim is because you printed on larger size paper and it is trimmed to the actual size, and that's why we refer to it as trim. So I'll move on to this next slide here. So when you're setting up the margins, when we set up our document, we actually set up our margins for 0.5 inches. So we had a margin that was set inside 0.5. So we didn't want any of our important information to spill out past that 0.5, past that margin. So that's why we call it safe or live area. And some people even call it text area, but it's usually referred to as safe or live area industry standard when you're looking up card online for mechanical specifications for setting up your ads for print. So you can also, there might be some that are looking for specific different margins, top and bottom, side to side. And if your ad is on a left-hand page in a really thick magazine, sometimes this margin where it glues inside the spine, inside the inside of the magazine, this might be greater because we don't want any of your ad to slide into that thick spine where it's hard to press the magazine flat open to see this ad in its entirety. So they might move it over to the left a bit and make more space here to accommodate for the spine. If your magazine is being stapled down the middle, it's really easy to press your magazine flat, which means these margins won't be as wide. But this is how you set it up. So when we set up our document, we can set up our margins. The default in InDesign is 0.5 inches anyway, so we're usually safe to go. So this is an actual ad I ripped out of a magazine to show you this bleed on all the sides. Notice all the text inside this ad is inside a 1/4 inch margin. See how it sits inside there and it doesn't fall out of there. So the reason why this is important is, and then you can see the margin slightly wider here compared to this side. Why? Because it's printed on a right-hand size page, and this ripped out here was sitting inside the spine. So we had a larger margin for the spine, and we had a 1/4 inch margin all the way around for our live or safe area. So you don't want your text to fall outside of that. So here's some examples of some ads. So we can see this has a 1/4 inch margin on this side. It's getting close. But look at this Louis Vuitton ad. This was pulled right out of a magazine. And look, even Louis Vuitton, as expensive as they are, hit the edge of this ad, which means this N is very it could easily be cut off in printing and in trimming. Same with the text on the left. So this is in danger of being cut off. That is poor placement of text. That should be inside a live or safe area. We should see some white space all the way around here. And then we have this one. We can see that the whole ad is shifted to the left, probably because it's on a left-hand page, and this margin here on the right is wider to accommodate the spine because it was probably in a really thick magazine. But we are getting dangerously close to the edge here. So it's getting too close to the edge. It's a little uncomfortable. It would have been nice to move that slightly to the right. So you do have to watch your margins to avoid things that look uncomfortably close to the edge and in danger of being cut off. And so if we do a quick review here, this is what you're looking at. So we have crop marks to indicate where the page is going to be trimmed. That's what the printer looks at. Anything outside of that is excess, so it appears that the ad has been printed right to the edge of the page. If your image is the exact same size of the page and it goes through the printer and the trimmer off just a little bit, you'll end up with a white edge, the white of the page down the side, and that never looks good, which is why we build in bleed, excess image to go outside of the trim to avoid those kinds of things. So again, bleed is the excess, inside is the trim, the actual size of the page. Inside the trim are your margins, which are your live or safe area. That's where you want to keep your image inside the space so it's not in danger of being cut off in print or when it is inside a magazine and in the spine. And there you go, trim, bleed, and live area.